All right, everybody, welcome back for week 12, chapter 10. Um, this week we're going to do kind of the same thing we did last week, except we're going to use a SQL database or SQL database. Some people say SQL. I say SQL most of the time. Don't know why. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it's kind of it's a language in itself, so you can add that to your resume. Um, it's a typical week. We're going to do your self-test exercises, the programming project, and a quiz. So go through the book, learn some stuff, and I'll show you how to do the project. This week, again, I'm not a huge fan of the way the book does the videos or the way they do their projects. I like to use a graphical user interface or an IDE whenever possible because command line is difficult to remember. So for this week, we're going to use XAMPP, which is a good kind of server emulator, and it also will host your databases in production or in development. So click the link and you will download the appropriate software for your operating system, whether you're using Mac, Linux, or Windows. I'm going to be using this 8.1.10. And when you click download, it'll take a minute. It won't start automatically, but I've already downloaded it several times. So when your downloads folder, just click on the installer and let it open up. And you will first get this error message that says that you're running antivirus and it could mess stuff up. Don't worry about it. Just click yes. And then you get another error message that says because you have user account control on a Windows computer, you have user account control, it could mess it up. And don't put it in the C program files directory because you can't write. You don't have any write permissions for that. So just click OK. Then you'll get to the actual installer. Just click next, next. You can see here my default location is going to install it to the root of C, not in the program files folder. So I'm just going to leave it on the root of C. Next, 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 and it's going to install, and that will take a few minutes. So I'm going to fast forward through this. All right, so we get to this point where it says you're done. Make sure this box is checked, so it'll start the control panel, and click finish. And then you'll be looking at this. This is the actual control panel for XAMPP. So you've got Apache, MySQL, FileZilla, Mercury, Tomcat. I'm not sure how, I know what FileZilla is. I don't know what these are or how to use them. The only things we ever use are the first two. So you want to start your Apache server. Make sure it says it's running, and to start your SQL, make sure it says it's running. And then click this admin button. This will take you to the admin site for your SQL databases. And you can kind of see on the left-hand side that there are some databases in there already. But we're going to create a new one. So click, you can click on new and then go to SQL. And there are a couple of commands. You've seen them in the other video. Create is an SQL command. We're going to create a database. We're going to call it user info. And you don't hit enter. There's a little go button down on the, below all this stuff right here. So you click the go button and then it'll do the thing. So we created a database, and you can see over on the left that it is there called user info database. You want to select that one and go back to your SQL, and we've got to create a table. We're going to, if it doesn't exist, we probably don't need to put this in there, but I always do just for precaution. If not exists, it should be if not exists. So if no table exists with the name login user, we're going to create a table called login user, and it will have a user ID, which will be an integer. It should never be null, and it will be a primary key and we want that to auto increment. Generally, when you're writing SQL, you put the stuff in capital letters. I don't know why. I don't like holding the shift key, so I don't. We want a username, and that is going to be a variable character, a bar char. Sounds like a Pokemon. That can be up to 255 characters. It seems a little lengthy, but we'll just leave it there. That's kind of the default thing. You can make it less or more if you want their username to only be 10 characters or whatever. And we want a user password. And that will also be a variable character, 255. And then we will put our parentheses here. So when your command looks like this, again, click the go button. You should get a green. If you're getting red, you did something wrong. So now we have on the left, you can see our user info database and our login user table. Don't get those confused. I do all the time. So in the login user, we need to add some information. So we're going to insert into login user a username and a user password. We have to give it some values. So if you autocomplete, it does it capital. And we will just do the username of john@gmail.com and a password of 123. And then go click your little go button. You got a green little check mark. It should have worked. You can go to your login user database and see right here in the middle that it does contain one user ID. This is the user ID that we don't create. It creates it on its own. The database does it, the software does it, and it will auto increment. So every one that you enter will be 1, 2, 3, and so on forever. Our username and our password are both in there. So now we have a database, we have a table, and we have some information in the table. So at this point, we can go ahead and start our project. We have our database. So I'm just going to minimize that. I'm going to minimize the control panel, make sure it stays running because you need that. You need your software to connect to it and look for data. Close out the XAMPP download stuff, and I'm creating a new folder. Login user, or whatever, chapter 10. It's chapter 10. And then I want to open this with this thing. Your IDE. So now we're in Visual Studio. All right, we got a blank folder, blank project, nothing in here. I'm gonna try and keep it this simple and short. So we're gonna need 3 files off the bat. We need our login.js. That's going to be our JavaScript file that does all the work. We need an index.html. This will be our login page or landing page. And again, just like last week, you really want to do some extra stuff. Maybe you want a register page, maybe you want some links and other stuff. This is just a very simplified version for time's sake. And then we need a welcome page. So when you successfully log in, it takes you to the home page, the welcome page, or whatever it may be. Then we need to make sure we do all the other stuff that we did for our other projects. We need to use npm to install packages, right? So the first thing we do is we initialize it. And the only thing I'm going to change here at the entry point or login.js, actually, since I already created, usually it says index.js, but since I've created the login.js first, it recognizes that there's a JS file there. So I'm going to leave it that. It'll be login.js. And everything's good. Just hit all the enter keys. And then we need to install some dependencies. We've been using Express and body parser, and for this one we need MySQL. So install those dependencies. It all looks good, and if you just want to double click on your packages, package.json, make sure your dependencies are there. That should be all that you need to do. So let's make our index pages real quick. Oh, I gotta put my little exclamation point in there. HTML. Our head. And in here, I'm just going to put a title. Login app. And I'm not using any CSS or JavaScript. We do still probably want to do the matter of fact, just copy and paste it from another project, or type it out. But you setting the width and the character set. Again, I'm not entirely sure how useful that is. Your body. Clean this up. Body, always put my little wrapper just so I can style it later. In the wrapper, we're going to have, I'm going to make this a class form. And in the form, well, in this div anyway, it's a div still, not a form yet. So user login. So a little header saying that this is the user login page. And we're going to make the form with an action. The action is going to be root, and the method is going to be post. So on our form, we just need 3 inputs. The first one will be an email. You know, sometimes you want to use an email for a login, or sometimes you just want them to have kind of a unique username, depending on how you want to do things. For this project, it's an email. So we've got an input of username, we've got an input type of a password. We're just going to name them password and username. They'll both be class input field for styling purposes. But again, if you don't plan on styling it, you don't need those. And we need an input type submit, so it makes it a button. I'm gonna make it a class. Yeah, class BTN, just for styling later. Log in. So we have 3 inputs. I think I'm gonna actually break those up just a little bit. You can do this in your CSS, or I'm just gonna do it right here. Make some breaks. So it looks better, and that is your index page. Save all, and if you want to go to your folder where you have it and open your index.html page, that's what it looks like. It's not very fancy, but you have your header, username, password. Why are the breaks not in there? Oh, they are, because otherwise they'd be showing in line. You put a second break in there, I wonder it'll actually create some space. File, save all. Refresh. Yeah, it'll create some space. You put a second break in there. I'm not worried about it right this second. So that is your HTML. In fact, I'm just going to copy this whole thing and paste it into the welcome page. And then I'm going to get rid of everything. Get rid of the form. And instead the H2, I'm going to make that H1 probably, but so this will just tell when you get to the welcome page that you logged in successfully. And this way we kind of know it works. This would be, you know, your home page or whatever you want your members to be logged into. So that is the page is done. Now we need to get to our JavaScript, which is the workhorse of this app, right? So if you remember from the other projects, we always have to kind of require the packages that we're using. SQL. We have Express, and we have body parser. So we have our dependencies, and then we're creating a variable to kind of store the act as the server, the Express server, viewer, whatever. App use, use Express dot static. We need to make sure it knows where to find the files. They're going to be mostly right in the root. Now, if you should want to style this later, and you would add this line should you decide to do that. Because you're going to put your CSS in a folder like we have been. Oop, that's a new file. I didn't want to do that. Delete that new file, create a new folder. Be my CSS folder. And then we need to do the URL. I'm not sure we actually need to do that. Let's leave it at this and see what happens. All right, so then we need to connect. So your variable connection is going to be equal to the MySQL create connection. Create connection. And when you do this, you need to pass it a few things. When it connects to the database, you need to tell it where the database is. In this case, it's going to be on a local host. When a person logs in, you're going to give him access to some folder that may contain database, or some databases, maybe not all. In this case, it's kind of bad practice, but we're just going to give him root access. The password is going to be null, and the database is user. Is it user info? I think so. Let's double check. Go back to the my admin. Yeah, so the table is login user, and it's easy to get these confused. The table is login user, but we actually need to connect to the user info database. So make sure, oh man, trying to make these all small. Make sure that use user info, the database, not the user, or not the table. Make sure you're connected to the database, not the table. I have messed that up before and then wondered why nothing would work. So now we need to connect to the database. And to do that, we do connection, call the connection variable, and then tell it to connect. And in case there's an error, we got to do some stuff. If there's an error, we'll throw an error. I don't think it's not actually going to do anything at this point, but it's there, and it will throw an error, and you'll see it in the console. It'll say all kinds of stuff because there was an error. Else, we want a console log that the connection was successful. Yay. So I think we can test this if we have the app listen on port 8080. So we save everything, save all, and we will open our browser. So now, well, the first thing we got to do is go into your console and type node login.js, and it says we connected to the database successfully. So that's great. I was going to pull up browser, but I won't actually show anything in the browser at this point. So that works, and we have connected to the database. Perfect. Now what do we do with that information? In here, we'll always put listen at the bottom, so create some space. And then we need a few methods, right? We need our get and our post methods. Get from the root, request response, send file per name plus index.html. And that's all you need for that one. And let's do app.post function request response. And here we're going to create a couple of variables to hold the information from the HTML page. ODY. So we've named them username and password on, that's the name of the element on the HTML page, and that's what we're requesting from the body. It's going to use body parser to go to the HTML page and parse out the username and password. And then we're going to save that into another variable called password, or username and password. We're going to do both. So we got our username and our password, and then we need to connect to the database and query or ask the database if this username and password combination exists in the database. And this is kind of a long command, so connection query, and we're going to put an SQL command in here. Select asterisk from login user table, where the username is equal to question mark and user underscore password equal to question mark. So those question marks are going to be filled in with this in square brackets username variable and the password WORD. And let me scroll so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So here's our SQL query, And the question marks, username and password, are right here. We're going to use these variables to change the query. And then we also need to do a function just in case there's an error. Error. You guys are probably too young to remember that. Anyway, username, password, and we will do, it needs a few things here. Function. If it sends back an error, if it sends back results, and fields. I hope you guys can see that. Okay, and then put your squiggly, hit enter, come back. Yeah, it didn't give you an end one either. So make sure it looks like this with your squiggly on one end. Try to keep it small so you guys can see. Make sure that you're starting to tell it what to do once this command runs. Make sure it looks like that, because it wasn't giving me all the punctuation like it normally does. It wasn't doing it for me. So connection query, if you want results, and they have to be, if you're not getting any results, if it's less than 0, or you're not getting any results, it's got to do something different. But you expect to get results, and you should once we finish anyway. We're gonna response is gonna be redirect to the welcome page. Redirect. Why? I all of a sudden can't spell. Redirect to the welcome page. So if the results are greater than 0, so that means if it queries the database and gets something back, it's going to send you to the HTML page or the welcome page. But those, they have to be there. The query won't accept information that's not in there. Else we want it to, this is where you would like put in a message saying, hey, your username and password are not right. But for this project, all we're doing is simply reloading that index.html, and that's what this is going to redirect to the root, which is the index.html for this particular project. And then we're just going to end the response. So that should be good. Let's save all that. And the last thing we need is when the login is successful, we need to do another get and send them to the welcome page. Is that right? Hope so. Function IN request response. Send file, their name, so it knows what file. So I guess here you don't need this HTML. We're just saying when you get the welcome, it's saying send this file from the directory. It's the welcome.html file. \. And that should be all we need. Save all. Now, let's see if it works. We are going to pull up a browser, and you can do this two ways. Right here, I'm looking at the file that we looked at earlier, and we don't want that. We want to check the server. So we can go to this local host. You can either type in localhost 8080, because that's the port we're listening on, or you can type the 127.0.0.1 0.0.1 8080. You can do it either way, and it should take you to the page because your Apache's running, your SQL's running, Node's running. It all works. In fact, normally what I would do is go in here to the console first. It's still running from before. I never stopped it. So Control C, just to make sure that it's loaded up all the most current files, because we just saved it again. And then do node login.js. You should get connected to the database successfully again. And then your login app, just refresh that, just to make sure it's running on all the most up-to-date stuff that we typed in there. So what did we have? If you look at your database again, your login user database, it's john@gmail.com, and the password is 123. So let's see if that works. john@gmail.com, and the password is 123. Submit query. Oh, the button's not right either. Hold on. Something is not right. Control C and stop that. Let's go here. Username. Root user info index. So it should be login. It's interesting. Let's try this again. 127.001.1.8080. Oh, I didn't start the server. Back in here, node login.js. Connected to the database successfully. Now, refresh. Okay, that works. But here the button says submit query. It shouldn't say that. It should say login, just like it does on my, just like I told it to. Oh, value. So there's an issue. Save all. Stop the server with Control C. And I just hit the up button to get the command I sent most recently. Connected successfully. Let's see what happens now. Refresh. Now it says login. Let's see what happens when I do this. john@gmail.com. 123. Cannot read properties of undefined breeding username. So I've spelled something incorrectly somewhere. Give me a second, I'll find it. Okay, figured out what I did. Back when we first started this app, I didn't include this line. app.useBodyParser.url encoded extended true. And I didn't use it because it's been depreciated, or at least I believe it has. So once you put that in there, that line obviously uses body parser, and then we look down, the error I was getting was that it couldn't figure out what username was. But I'm sitting right here trying to get these variables. We're using body parser to get that from the HTML. So you need this line in there, and that's what that does. So now if I do start the server, node login.js, you connect to the database successfully. We go to our login app and we put in John, John @gmail.com. If you can spell better than I can. The password is 123. We log in and you successfully logged in. So if we put in the wrong password and try and log in, it just takes us back here because this is what we told it to do. You can have it do a pop or some kind of error message telling people that username and password is wrong, but for this project it does not do that. If we use james@gmail.com with the correct password, it still won't log in because it's looking for the combination email and password. So that works. And if you want to take it a step further, keep testing, you can go to your admin page for your SQL database. And again, we just have the one user. If you want to add a user, select the login user database, go to SQL and do that insert command again. So insert into login user table. We're going to give it a username and a user password. It will auto increment the values. It'll auto increment the user ID on its own. And this can be james@gmail.com. And we'll make his password. Make sure you go down and hit the little go button. And you get a green check. It should work. Go back to your, click on your login user, and then you should be able to see that has added james@gmail.com. You can do this dynamically through the HTML, like if you have a register page, it'll do that. This video is already long enough, but so we go in here now, and we can do james@gmail.com, and his password, login. It'll log him in as well. But you can't just do some random stuff, anyone@gmail.com, and password. It should not work. Yeah, it doesn't work. So that's how you use SQL to do a simple login page. Obviously, again, there's a lot more to it, but I'm trying to keep these things under an hour. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks.